This is Zach Clark, Development and Leadership Coaching, and I want to focus in on a very provocative topic, which is board leadership. Really working and leading your board, particularly as it relates to moving your organization forward and raising money. Now, one of the trends that I see out there and have for probably the past decade or so is I think there's an unhealthy obsession on the part of leaders as it relates to fundraising and their board. There is no question that boards are highly effective when they get involved in raising money. All the data suggests it. What I think is unhealthy is that we are oftentimes either browbeating the board or we are very frustrated. We're living as leaders with a frustration with our board because they're not as involved in this area of raising money. And I think that while we can all agree that board members have a tremendous impact on raising money, we also as leaders have to recognize the reality of the culture that we're living in, and that it is very hard to build and sustain a board that is heavily involved in raising money. If your board did not start that way, then it's likely that that culture does not exist in your current board. And you don't change board culture overnight. It takes time. So I see a lot of unhealthy focus on this, and I also see a lot of unhealthy frustration on the part of leaders on this. So what I want to do on this video is share a few things with you that I think are highly effective at focusing your board on the right things. And you may even share this video with them because these are things that they really can do, and I think have the confidence that it's going to make a big difference. So first of all, one of the priorities of the board, and your priority as a leader in working with the board, should be to expand their world. Expand their world. Boards are often, thankfully, made up of amazingly talented and experienced people who have a real heart for the mission of your organization. But they are only as good as their collective experience brought together. And under pressure or crisis, or in an area where maybe they don't have experience, they just, like we all do, fall back on their own experiences. And there is certainly tremendous value there. But there are times where that leads us to sort of reinvent the wheel or rely only on our wisdom. It's rare in today's world that your organization is going to face a challenge where someone out there hasn't already faced this and done this better. So there's nothing new under the sun. And so the tendency sometimes is to pull inward and just have this conversation around a table, rather than saying, you know what, before we take action, let's expand our world. Let's get in touch with some experts. Let's reach out to some other boards. Let's do some learning on this topic. Let's take a trip together. Let's go on a retreat together. Let's expand our world and get ourselves exposed to some different ideas before we make this big decision. So that is something that I think you as a leader can really take responsibility for, that your board can be encouraged to really take responsibility for as well. Next, I really encourage boards to focus on expanding the world of the leader. And I don't mean that just in terms of learning and being exposed to other ideas, but also in terms of expanding your influence. Too much of the time we are talking to board members and saying, hey, I need you to help me raise money. I need you to introduce me to people that I can ask to give. When what we really need to be doing is just focusing on growing our influence and asking the board to help with that. Each board member represents a circle of influence. Sometimes it's very wide. Create ways for them in an easy way to expand your influence and expand your world. So again, you can take responsibility for encouraging them to do that, putting it in that context. I need you to expand my world. I need you to help me grow my influence. And not about raising money helps people for sure. They need to know that you're not just going to run around helter-skelter asking their friends and contacts for money. But that instead you're operating as a leader, as a professional, as someone in the community that they really want others to get to know. That's how you grow that influence. Another key thing for you, if not the board, although it's best when both the board and the leader are focused on this, you've got to be thinking 2 to 3 board members down the line. Too much of the time, boards are just sort of existing and then, oh, I guess it's time we need to get someone new. You should know, I would say it this way, the leaders that I've seen that have enjoyed the most stability and long-term impact in their organization are the leaders who are not manipulating the board, and the board is not manipulating the process, but they are thinking 2, 3, maybe even more board members down the line. They have an eye on people in committees that could potentially become great board members, but they're watching them. They have their eye on board members or potential board members that years from now could become the next treasurer or could become the next board president. They're thinking talent development instead of just recruiting talent. There's a big distinction there. So I really encourage you to take responsibility for that and try to get your board taking that responsibility as well. Another thing, particularly as it relates to development, is asking board members to host small group meetings that introduce people to the vision and the work of the organization. So not fundraising events, not necessarily hosting tables at events, hosting a small group meeting, 2 people over lunch, 5 people over breakfast, 7 people in their home. Small groups from year to year that they are purposefully, intentionally reaching out to just to invite in, just to provide input, advice, get awareness for the organization. That's it. You're able to then follow up from there on those relationships. Let's see. Next one. I'm a big believer in this, and I know there's different governance models for organizations, but I believe that most of the time a board functions best when it's doing real work that moves the organization forward, but it's doing it at a committee level. The big clue here is if your board members are really, really long, unless you're meeting like quarterly. If you're meeting every month or every couple of months and your board members are really, really long, you're doing too much real work in the board meeting. And that you need to create and encourage the board to create committees that are focused on doing real work. So not committees just to meet and hash over things, committees doing real work. So do you have a development committee that's focused on growing giving? Do you have a finance committee that's thinking 5, 10 years out instead of just how are we going to pay the bills this month? Do you have an ad hoc committee, a short-term task force assigned to work on one of the priorities in your strategic plan for your future? These are all very essential ways that the board can be involved in moving things forward, but that's not happening at the board level completely. The other benefit of that approach is you're involving people outside the board in a leadership way, which is very helpful in terms of getting more people involved and moving forward and giving as well. So building these structures to really take advantage of the talented people and resources that God has in your community is critical. I don't really know of a better way to do that than having boards doing real work on committees or task forces. Another one is to take time to educate the board and really challenge the board to have a deep understanding of your economic engine just as much as the financial risks. Boards by nature, because of their fiduciary responsibility, are risk adverse and risk managers. Their natural role is to make sure that we aren't doing anything stupid from a financial perspective. They're sort of looking around the corner at the what ifs, and that's an appropriate role for a board. But that has to be balanced with a real deep understanding of the economic engine. What is it that we do that's essential that grows and sustains our revenue? What does our long-term financial health look like? What are our projections? Are we looking beyond just the yearly nonprofit kind of mentality? That is a key responsibility of the board, and it doesn't happen by accident. You have to be intentional in encouraging and teaching the board that understanding, as well as them challenging you as a leader and the staff to be thinking about both the financial engine as well as the financial risks. Now, the last component of what I try to share with boards is simply said, but a very big idea. And that is, boards really need to be investing in the leader. And I don't mean investing in the way that we use that word nowadays, which would be investing financially, while that's important, investing in time and helping you grow and investing in opportunities for you to learn. That's all very important as well. What I'm, though, talking about here is a different, it's a little known definition of the word invest. And I wrote a book years ago on board leadership, of all things, in the 21st century. And there's this little known definition of the word invest. It's to surround with troops or ships so as to prevent escape or entry. To surround with troops or ships so as to prevent escape or entry. And I love that picture of a board that's surrounding the leader with prayer, protection, wisdom, guarding against rumor, and guarding against the things in the culture that are unhealthy and drag you down. I love that. And boards do have, I think, generally speaking, a desire to do that, but it has to be called out. It has to be encouraged. And you have to be transparent enough to share, this is a need that I have as a leader.